All right, let's get started. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Jasper Driesens. I am the CEO and co-founder of Glo Dollar. And here is Garm Lucassen, CTO and co-founder of Glo Dollar. But today, we're actually not here to talk about Glo Dollar. We're here to talk about and discuss with you and collaborate on stablecoin diversity and fixing Ethereum's single points of failure. So, what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that right now, USDT and USDC comprise 96% of centralized stablecoins. And that means that we're basically trusting two companies to control pretty much all centralized stables. And centralized stablecoins have grown to become critical Ethereum infrastructure. So they facilitate DEX liquidity. We did some research. Right now, 43% of all DEX swaps involves either USDC or USDT. We rely on them as DeFi collateral. They're a core part of DAO and protocol treasuries. So they're pretty important to the ecosystem. And the fact that a duopoly right now is in control of this infrastructure is dangerous for a couple reasons. So the first reason is that if you have a duopoly controlling this infrastructure, it gives you single points of failure. I think this is what we got a preview of when USDC briefly depacked last year. When that happened, quite quickly, DEX liquidity evaporated for a lot of tokens on Curve and Uniswap.
And that interaction and that exchange, I think, is just going to get tighter as things go on. But I also think that as regulators see more of these use cases, that they see that there's value and utility around them, that it's not just pump and dump schemes and terrorist financing and things like that, that they will start to engage on the utility side as much as they will on the control side. So I think that we're coming up on time. I am taking away that from this that the regulatory side is at least something that you all are curious about, that additional protocols are something that you'd like to see us pursue, and across a wide variety of protocols. That you are interested in the direct integrations with dApps and DeFi rather than through some of these other agencies, and that hopefully you will engage with us as we go to help craft a stablecoin that's really going to work for all of you. Please take a look at the faucet at faucet.paxos.com. Please send us any other suggestions or thoughts that we have. We really want to be here with you. And we really want to be building this with you to make it the stablecoin of choice for payments in your applications. And please do take a beanie because it's cold outside. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your show.
Came off.
One of the co-founders. We're doing a workshop right now. Okay. What are you working on?
that's like a very, very hard liquid. And then,
Yeah, I know.
thank you. Do we have two, or is it just one?
Easier for PayPal. So we have this like polling
They should still have it, no?
Probably.
Or is this the second one?
Oh, is this on?
so then it just
Check.
kind
No.
of like just like
That one is.
I think it's going to grow. And like even the stablecoin market, I think. Do you need us to move out of the way? Oh yeah.
Oh, you guys did the cards?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh ja. Moet ik een beetje in de hoek blijven staan hier? Dat die verder naar voren?
Sure.
Where you from? I can sense an accent.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if the whole thing falls.
Hello everyone. Stablecoin diversity workshop starting in a little bit. If you would also like to break the stablecoin duopoly, grab a seat and wait a couple minutes.
Kunnen wij gewoon beginnen? Denk het. Ja. Natuurlijk niet alles.
Want er werden eerst ook dingen omgeroepen.
Wij deden het zelf.
Ik zelf nu, zeg maar.
Ja, nee, ik weet het niet precies. Wij hebben maar ergens de home system gegeven voor.
Is er nu letterlijk niemand? Dat zou wel heel jammer zijn. You here for the workshop?
Yeah.
Awesome.
What's workshop?
We're waiting for permission to start, I think, but should be a couple minutes.
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? I'm Ryan.
Garm, nice to meet you.
What is it?
Garm.
Nice to meet you too.
Jasper,
Jesper. Nice to meet you both.
nice to meet you.
Fan of your project.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I see someone from Reserve in the back. Come have a seat if you want to talk about stablecoin diversity in a couple minutes. Wat zei je? Gaat een announcement doen? Oké. Thus. How was Nevin's talk?
Good. I've heard it before.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. I wanted to be there, but this coincided. Do the calls, but I am curious about his ideas because regulations are fucking annoying. Okay, we're going to start the workshop in a minute or two. So how'd you learn about us?
I don't remember. I've been aware of Glo Dollar for a bit, but in the network somehow.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer to that.
No problem.
Yeah.
You with B? Or just wearing their merch?
Yeah. I'm with B. So, I guess the meta project is eco, and we built Beam as part of it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was already like, how do I know the name?
Yeah.
Interesting. What do you do?
Co-founder of it, so whatever's required, basically.
Nice.
Yeah. Nominally COO of the project, but you guys, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. whatever we need to do.
I recently changed from CMO to CEO, and my job didn't really change. It was like, I still just do whatever we need to do.
It's like when you're young enough, they're kind of made up titles.
Yeah, exactly.
For a while, except for CEO. That has a particular set of responsibilities, but within that, it's like the yin and yang of co-founders.
Yeah, the main thing that changed for me was I'm a little bit more worried about the legal stuff now.
Definitely. Yeah.
And like the securities regulations.
Talk about that. I was a lawyer in a former life. That's 10 years ago now.
Okay.
A dev, and then a lawyer, and then back to a dev, turned project. So I had like a season of legal practice.
Turns out that is an amazing background for what you're doing right now.
Yeah, totally. So this, what I'm doing right now is the first thing I've been able to make sense of. Get started.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Jasper Driesens. I am the CEO and co-founder of Glo Dollar. And here is Garm Lucassen, CTO and co-founder of Glo Dollar. But today, we're actually not here to talk about Glo Dollar. We're here to talk about and discuss with you and collaborate on stablecoin diversity and fixing Ethereum's single points of failure. So, what's the problem here? Well, the problem is that right now, USDT and USDC comprise 96% of centralized stablecoins. And that means that we're basically trusting two companies to control pretty much all centralized stables. And centralized stablecoins have grown to become critical Ethereum infrastructure. So they facilitate DEX liquidity. We did some research. Right now, 43% of all DEX swaps involves either USDC or USDT. We rely on them as DeFi collateral. They're a core part of DAO and protocol treasuries. So they're pretty important to the ecosystem. And the fact that a duopoly right now is in control of this infrastructure is dangerous for a couple reasons. So the first reason is that if you have a duopoly controlling this infrastructure, it gives you single points of failure. I think this is what we got a preview of when USDC briefly depacked last year. When that happened, quite quickly, DEX liquidity evaporated for a lot of tokens on Curve and Uniswap. And other tokens like DAI, Frex, and LUSD also depacked. So this one token's failure had a lot of downstream effect. But also, a duopoly can get lazy or greedy because you basically have two companies that can get complacent because they have a lot of power. So we already see this a little bit. Tether last year made 8% APY on their reserves, which is way beyond the risk-free rate. And they're being transparent about how that exactly works. And when Circle depacked, we found out that their reserves are not spread across enough banks, or at least they weren't at the time. And they also weren't transparent about that. So that's the stuff you can get away with if you are a duopoly. And lastly, and most fundamentally, a duopoly breaks censorship resistance. Ethereum's last line of defense against censorship is doing a hard fork. But right now, if that would happen, these two companies would basically pick the winning fork because their stablecoins would lose their value and the other. So if you want to censor Ethereum right now, you have to pressure two companies, and that's not very robust. So basically, these two tokens, they're too big to fail, and this is a systemic risk. So let's try to get to a more healthy situation than this one. So what do we need to do? Well, roughly, there's two directions we can solve this. Right now, we depend on 2 companies. One thing that we can do is to say, well, let's depend on more companies. Let's spread out risk so 2 are not too powerful because there's many. And the other solution would be to say, no, let's shy away from depending on companies altogether. Let's start using more decentralized alternatives and protocols like Maker, Reserve, and Gyroscope that either prevent this by using on-chain collateral or by adding like a risk management layer on top of company dependence. And I think it's good to realize that these are not mutually exclusive. We can pursue both paths, and we probably need to, because right now, demand for centralized stablecoins absolutely dwarfs demand for decentralized alternatives. And I think this could change with education and with tech progress. This can shift. The question is by how much? Maybe it can shift. Maybe it will shift a little. Maybe it will shift a lot. But I think it's very implausible that we'll ever entirely get rid of centralized stablecoins. For the very reason, for instance, that I could see my dad trusting a centralized stablecoin because it's very easy to explain how that works. I couldn't see my dad anytime soon trusting what's on the right here, which is one part of how Maker works. So I think that whatever the possible world is that we'll find ourselves in the future, it's going to contain centralized stablecoins. And in all of these possible worlds, it would be better if that's not a duopoly, but a diversity. So basically, we should pursue both of these solution directions. And today, we're here to talk about the stablecoin diversity one. So we need stablecoin diversity. Let's quickly define what we want to achieve. What is the goal state? And let's keep it simple for now. We can discuss the parameters here. But let's say that we want to get to a situation where we have more than 10 omnipresent stablecoins. And these are basically the large, very liquid stablecoins that are everywhere you want them to be. They're on every exchange, they're on every protocol, they're on every chain, they're on every dApp. Right now, I think only 2 tokens meet that definition, and we want many more. As a bonus, we would want them to be spread out across multiple regulatory environments. And so that's not really about market share, but let's, as a proxy, say, if a stablecoin has more than 5% market share, it's probably omnipresent. So let's get to 10 or more stablecoins that meet that definition. Because if we do, then we live in a world where one failure breaks far fewer things. We live in a world where if one stablecoin fails, it's going to be very easy to migrate to an alternative. It's going to be much harder to censor Ethereum. And because the cost of switching for a user is very low, there's going to be more healthy competition among stablecoins. And that's what we want. Okay, so let's do this. How are we going to actually make progress here? Well, we can take inspiration from how the community has made progress on the problem of client diversity. I don't think we're quite there yet, but the community was able to make a lot of noise recently through education, memes, pressuring large actors to do this. Yeah, that actually worked to quite an extent. So let's take inspiration. Let's start a movement. Let's raise awareness of the problem. Let's make diversification cool. Let's apply peer pressure to large actors. And we can actually start doing that today. We brought some tools for you to use. So one is we launched a website, stablecoindiversity.org, that you can share with people to educate them on the problem and solution directions. We also this morning posted 2 threads that basically summarize the problem statement that I just shared with you. So if you agree, you can go to Garm's account on Farcaster, which is @Garm, G-A-R-M, or on X, which is @garmr.com, and you can retweet that. But also, since we're here in physical presence of one another, we also brought cards. And they're here on the seats, but we also brought a whole bunch of them here on the right. We really have plenty, so please, if you want to spread the word, take a couple of these cards and spread them around for the rest of this week. So that's something we can start doing today. But the question is, what do we want people to do actionably? What's our CTA for people that we reach? Well, in the basis, of course, we want people to start using minority stablecoins. But I think if we keep it to just that, we're going to run into some issues because we have to deal with a couple coordination problems. So we can get a little bit more smarter with what we spread as a CTA. And these coordination problems basically stem from the problem that minority stablecoins are inferior stablecoins until many more people use them. Because by default, you prefer stablecoins that are well-known, trusted, liquid, widely available, integrated, et cetera, et cetera. And based on these criteria, the reality is that right now, USDT and USDC win among centralized stablecoins. So if we start asking people use minority stablecoins, we can anticipate 3 common concerns. The first is people are going to say, what's in it for me? Why would I do that? The second is, sure, but I'll wait until they have more adoption, basically until others do it. And the third would be, okay, I'd love to, but it's not on my dApp protocol chain off-ramp, so I can't yet, or it's not liquid enough. And let's tackle each of these coordination problems. So the first is what's in it for me. That obviously stems from the issue that most people act in their own self-interest. So even if they agree with the campaign, they might not care that much about the greater good. And that's going to be especially true if we want people to switch to carbon copies of USDT and USDC. The issue for them is that they are strictly functionally inferior in the sense that they offer no other features than USDC or USDT do, but they do it in a less liquid, less widely available way. So if we ask people to switch to these stablecoins, this campaign is going to be an uphill battle. However, there's a new breed of centralized stablecoins that offer a unique feature. And because of that, they have an easier way to attracting new users, because there might be cases where they're already sometimes someone's best choice. So for instance, USDM is yield-bearing, USDF incentivizes distribution. Although I heard from Matthew's talk this morning that we might have mischaracterized them as centralized, but that's a topic for discussion, I guess. And Glo Dollar is a stablecoin that lets you fund public goods. So let's update our CTA to make it more effective. Let's start asking people to start using minority stablecoins with a unique competitive path, because it will make this adventure easier on us. Second problem is some folks will say, sure, but I'll wait a little bit until they have more adoption, because no one wants to be the first mover here. Let's say there's a minority stablecoin called NewUSD, and there is obviously the duopoly. Then the status quo is that no one is using NewUSD. What we want to have is that a critical mass is using NewUSD, so let's say 3. And by that, we would have more stablecoin diversity. Problem is that no one wants to be the first mover, because the first one to do this uses stablecoin that sucks comparatively until the rest follows suit. So the first mover has more risk here. So how can we solve this? Well, choosing a stablecoin is not necessarily binary. If you are a DAO with a large treasury, you can actually start diversifying a little bit. So this is something that it's not binary choice, it's more like a slider. So this is something that Gitcoin did. They are using millions of USDC in their treasury. Recently, they swapped 100K to Glo Dollar. So they made a tiny step in the direction of diversification. And what we can do collectively is something that I would call collective gradual diversification, where basically one actor takes the first move, starts diversifying a little bit. This sends a signal to the other actors that they could follow suit. So they also diversify a little bit. And now the first actor is sort of like emboldened to take the next step. And if we rinse and repeat this, then we'll have a new omnipresent stable, and no single actor really took any outsized risk during this process. So it's like a smoother process. So let's update our call to action again. Let's say start using minority stablecoins with a unique competitive path and diversify gradually. And then the last problem is that even if people want to use minority stablecoins, they will run into the issue that it's not on their preferred chain or dApp or whatever, or it's not liquid enough. And that comes from the fact that new stablecoins face not one, but sort of like 3 chicken and egg problems at the same time. So the first one is, if you're a stablecoin with no adoption, then you have this vicious loop where no one is using you. Because no one is using you, no one knows you. And because no one knows you, no one will use you. So that's one thing that you'll have to bootstrap. The other problem is that you're not integrated on the dApps, on the chains, on the protocols, on the exchanges. And builders have no reason to start supporting your stablecoin because no one is asking for it. So you won't get any integrations. But if you have no integrations, no one will start using you. So that's this other thing that you'll need to bootstrap. And then the third thing is liquidity. If there's no liquidity, users will not use you. If there's no demand from users, there's little LP yield to be made. So LPers won't provide liquidity, and that's a third thing that you have to bootstrap. Obviously, for USDT and USDC, it's inverted. They have this all established already. In fact, this is what comprises their network effect. Minority stablecoins will need a little push on all of these fronts. So I think for the first loop, we sort of like got that covered. If we get enough people to diversify gradually, we can bootstrap adoption like that. For the integrations, what we want to ask is for builders to support minority stablecoins preemptively. So basically, before users ask for it, because that's a way to break that chicken egg problem. And then for bootstrapping liquidity, what we want is some LPers to start providing liquidity even before there's a lot of yield to be made. We could call that we want them to LP charitably. And if we get enough builders and LPers and users to take tiny steps in the right direction, we can lift these minority stablecoins out of their chicken and egg problems. So the final call to action that I would propose, we're going to discuss that in a minute, is, hey, crypto world, let's start using minority stablecoins with a unique competitive path. And we recommend to diversify gradually, support preemptively, and LP charitably. Okay, that's the monologue part of this workshop. Now onto the actual workshop.
Thanks, Jasper. And we're very curious about your thoughts about all of this as well. And yeah, we basically would just want to open it up to the audience and ask you for input on two big questions. Like, what do you see as the top challenges to improve stablecoin diversity? And how can you, as an individual or as an organization, help the stablecoin diversity movement? So basically, we're starting a Telegram group, which is called the Stablecoin Diversity Crisis Crew. And we'd love to have you join that and sort of share how you can contribute to that cause. But first, I'd like to open it up to you just here on the floor and hear what you think about these two questions. I think the group is small enough that we can just do it interactively. So if you have thoughts on one or both of these questions, love to hear it. Sure, Nevin. I'm not sure if we have another mic that actually works. This one? Or I can just give you this one.
So for the client diversity on Ethereum, like sort of going sort of viral and people paying attention to it, it seems like crucial to that was people really feeling viscerally that, oh shit, there might be a real threat here. And so the case that you made about, Ethereum would be censorable if, only these two companies were pressured. I think I'm interested in like digging into that and seeing like, is that a real threat? Like, could that actually happen, and how specifically would it happen? Or are we just arguing that it could happen and so we should like, reduce tail risk? Because if you dig in and you find some sort of real credible threat that you can then present, and like the intellectuals in this space will all be like, holy shit, I'm actually feeling viscerally worried about that, then they're going to retweet the thing. Then they're going to talk about it publicly, and that could be a vehicle for getting people to take this seriously. But if you dig in and you're like, like, yes, in theory this could happen, but we can't really come up with any like concrete argument for why it would get censored that way or whatever, then like, well, maybe it's fine. Maybe we don't have a stablecoin diversity problem, right? So I feel like that's the heart of the matter, and if you can like prove that in more detail, that could really like cause the thing to actually be seen by many more people, because the smart people with a lot of followers will talk about it. So I'm curious how much you've thought through, like, have you already gone that deeply, and do you feel like that threat, like because there's a particular scenario you're imagining, or have you not maybe made it quite that deep yet?
I don't think we have gone that deep yet, unless you have. I think he just turned it on, so it should work. So that's a great point, and something we definitely need to do a lot more research on. I know it's something that Vitalik has also flagged like 2 years ago, but it's never really picked up as much as it should have. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, I think a good question is when like what do we want to see before it starts from, like, we all know it's mechanically possible, I think. So the question is, what's the probability that, I guess, a government agency takes the step in actually doing it? I think the most common scenario that people are speculating about is that at some point, perhaps some government wants to push through like OFAC compliance. So basically, when it happens that stakers are too centralized in parties like Coinbase, the government could use that as a pressure point, and then Ethereum's resistance to that would be hard forking, and that should work, if not for the fact that we have these two stablecoins that then lose their value on the other fork. I think it's a very good question, like, to what extent is that going to happen? Circle has been pressured to sanction and censor Tornado Cash related addresses, of course. I think that's the only situation that sort of like it actually happened. But yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not like a theoretical like what could happen. Like this has been like war roomed out, and like what would the implications of this be, and like simulations have been done on this, and it has not been in the public eye because the meme wasn't as good, but now I think actually like taking like client diversity meme and turning that into stablecoin diversity meme, I think that's really smart, going to catch on for sure. But yeah, if the hard fork, if the DAO hack, for example, if the DAO hack had happened a year later, which it just as easily could have, right, where 30% of all the ETH was stuck inside of this contract, and a hard fork had to be happen to fix it. Circle gets to pick which Ethereum is the real Ethereum. They get to pick because every lending, all of DAI is backed, majority backed by USDC, Aave, like everything collapses, it doesn't work, and the people deciding, controlling the validators, Lido, the people deciding which fork is the real fork, are going to go along with whatever Circle says because they don't want to lose their entire livelihoods and everything that we've spent a decade building up, right? So Circle gets to decide what Ethereum hard forks are the correct ones, which means that they can decide what to put into the hard fork. That's it. Like that should be hugely terrifying to everybody who cares about neutrality. I'm terrified of that. So. Let's vampire attack Circle. Thanks.
I know we don't have time for a whole war game right now, but let's say there were 10. Okay? There's 10, and a hard fork's happening. Then what?
Yeah, so I think the best situation would be that it's not 10 in the US, but it's 10 or more spread across multiple regulatory environments, and ideally also per environment, one and then a backup or something. And then you can have competition between regulatory environments, even though the US would probably still be pretty dominant.
Right, but with the general scenario of there's a hard fork for some extrinsic reason, and then... Well, right. I mean, even if, it's like, even if they're not that coordinated, even if there's no government trying to push them one direction or another, there's going to end up having to be a consensus formed.
You're right. All of real-world assets is simply too risky to put too much money in, and we should have essential assets instead. You're right.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that I kind of wanted to bring up in regards to like why the push I think took place on Ethereum in regards to the validators versus the push on the stablecoin side. And I think some of this was driven by Gary Gensler and the SEC going, oh, now that staking is consolidated with Lido and Coinbase, now there's a way for us to show that we as the US government has power to start to enforce things. And I think that was kind of that existential threat that ended up pushing a lot of people to realize that this is a potential attack vector because the threat was realized. The one issue that I see with like moving from stablecoins, let's say from Tether and Circle to all of these other parties, is the back end problem, which is you need a banking system in order to be able to allow for you to hold dollars. So unless you move to something that's more synthetic or crypto collateralized, which I feel like a lot less people trust than the dollar-backed ones, that end problem is still going to sit there and still going to exist. And one of the things is like I do see that there's an issue with the centralization with the USDC, more so with the USDT because they're not as regulated or fully backed, quote unquote, as some of the more regulated ones. But the issue that I kind of see with a lot of this, or not issue that I see with a lot of this, is when the banks in the US were failing at the beginning of last year, right? Like my money in my bank account was actually less safe than my cash sitting in a stable coin. Because like if you look at like the largest outflows of capital that have taken place, I think it was like $40 billion from SVB or something like that over the course of 8 hours. Well, the funny part is like if you look at the top 10 list, I mean, they don't include Tether or Circle's redemptions, but like there was an $8 billion outflow out of Circle. There was like, I think, an $11 billion outflow out of Tether. They had no problem actually issuing out and redeeming all of those funds. So like I actually feel like the way in which quasi-regulation has been set up for stablecoins has actually made that a much safer spot to keep your cash. And so like from a diversification perspective, I feel like if there's a good enough alternative in the crypto space that people can get comfortable around, I can see that working. But like a lot of the stablecoin use cases now, like they're trying to bridge, let's say, traditional finance and let's say crypto finance, where you can actually use your stablecoins for real world assets. And I feel like with a lot of the crypto collateralized stuff, it's very difficult to move from the crypto world to the real world. So I feel like unless there's some kind of additional yield or additional value proposition for some of these tokens, it's going to be very hard to push people over. And just for like from a contextual perspective, so like we work in the Cardano ecosystem for one of the founding entities, and we've been trying to get a stablecoin into our ecosystem for a really long time. So 10 years ago, I worked at Paxos, helping them get the trust charter and everything else set up, and we were trying to replicate something similar. But going to companies like USDC and trying to get them to come over, it was like a $10 million initiation fee for them to make money off the yields from our own ecosystem. Like I don't pay my Uber driver to go to his house. So it's like it didn't make sense for us. And when we were trying to get all of this set up as well, like in our ecosystem, we don't have a freeze and seize functionality like the ERC20 proxy contracts. And so a lot of these traditional players are not willing to play in our space because like the DFS, at least in New York, when we were setting up USDP back at Paxos, they would not allow for us to issue a stable coin unless that functionality was built in. So you kind of like have to deal with this weird thing where it's like crypto was built for one thing, like tokenization of real world assets, and let's say you're interacting with normal financial systems in another manner. Like you have to like change around a lot of the underlying blockchain in order to be able to fit it into the real world. And I'm like, is that even a viable route for us to be running down in crypto? Or how do you make it work where you don't lose literally the entire purpose of crypto, which is the decentralized element? But that's kind of just my 2 cents.
Okay, so we got time for one more question, I think. I think what would also be interesting is to hear from anyone here an idea to make like progress on this. So we plan on hosting a similar kind of workshop at EthCC in not Paris but Brussels, and perhaps we want to make this a continuous thing at stable summits. So what would be something that someone in the audience here could do, just a small step, to, when we meet again in Brussels, say, hey, we made actually a little bit of progress here. There's this large DAO now that diversified a little bit. We spread awareness. Now everyone understands this meme, something in that direction. You want a mic? Oh. Right. I think if that's it, let's. Oh.
I don't know about a meme, but one mechanistic thing you could do is essentially vampire attack the stable coins, right? By having some sort of additional layer on top that is holding these stablecoins, and then over time, sort of everyone is agreeing through governance to collectively switch to a new distribution. So you can imagine something like that. It's not a meme, but it's a more mechanistic way of doing that.
Yeah, I like it. It's probably better than a meme. Or maybe it needs to collaborate with a meme. Right. Thank you all. Be sure to grab a bunch of cards there and distribute them on the bathrooms, for instance, that you attend to over the next couple of days.
Yeah, and join the Telegram group if you like.
Thanks so much.